Hello and welcome to another edition of Conversations of the Heart. As always, it is your boy T Till. Man, we got a special guest in the building today, friend of the show. It's been, I think, a few years since you stopped by the show, but the last one we did was amazing. Mr. C here is a legend in the CHH game. He is the host of Live with Mr. C. He is an ordained minister. He is the president slash CEO of Serious People Music. Shout out to Serious Voice. He is the program director of 520 Radio, and he also is a husband, a father. More importantly, my friend. And ladies and gentlemen, Mr. C. Mr. C, welcome to the show. I could have rattled off a couple more things, but I don't know how much time we have. I don't know how much time we have here, Mr. C, because you do a lot of things. You produce, you sing, you put on events, hey, listen, man, I don't know if we have as much time to go through this CVS list of receipts that you have of all that you do. But you are one of, in my eyes, one of the forefathers of CHH, and what you and Serious Voice have done for that genre, I think should be commended, respected, and honored. So, salute to you both on your achievements in that sector and genre. I won't tell you a lie. I never really got into it until y'all was doing it. That's just me. And until you started inviting me to those events, me, Queens, New York, I'm a hip hop guy. Gospel's gospel and hip hop is hip hop. I keep those two things separate. You know what I'm saying? When I was, growing up, that's just what it was. You know what I'm saying? And
you always 100 with that. Yep.
Facts until you introduced me to that genre and how many dope MCs are in that genre, including yourself and Serious Voice. And y'all do some amazing things, man. So thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for doing the show. It's been a long time coming. We've been trying to get a date, but just so the people know, it's hard to book you. It's hard to book you. So I, I appreciate this, and I appreciate this because Mr. C, it's what. Before we get into that, because I almost started to go. Before we get into that, how about you introduce yourself to the people, for the people who don't know you, and there's not a lot of many people who don't know who Mr. C is, but for the people who don't know you, share a little bit about yourself, Mr. C.
Okay. Yes, as T Till said, and I really appreciate T Till conversation with T Till having me on. I go by the name of Mr. C Live. I am a DJ. I DJ gospel events. I am the host of Live with Mr. C, which is also on the station our program known as 520 Radio. Shout out to Eric Boston, who's the overall founder of that brand. Live with Mr. C is also syndicated in Canada right now, internet station-based stations, right? Canada and the UK. Also, as he said, I'm the president of Serious People Music. I currently manage two artists: my wife, Serious Voice, and Constant Battle out of Buffalo, New York. Award-winning radio announcer, ordained minister, producer, slash songwriter, mainly hooks. I guess you can say I'm a songwriter in my own right. Beat maker. I do a number of things, all to first of all impact, in a desired fashion, the youth and anybody that would listen. So that's what I believe God created me to do, and that's what He created me to be. Just an overall creative and a person who champions evangelism for the gospel of Jesus Christ. Those are some of my main assignments, among other things.
And so, like I said, ladies and gentlemen, he does a lot. So along this journey, man, me and you have had a lot of candid conversations.
Yep.
Off camera. And one of the things I said, we got to have certain conversations on camera, man, because I've seen a lot of things, but seen a lot of things out there in the streets, and especially in these Christian streets, and you know, and we have a lot of these long conversations just about the state of Christianity, the state of where we're at now, right? As a country, and everything that's going on here, right? And I won't lie to you, Mississippi. One thing I haven't told you is I'm seeing a lot of Christian beef. Now, I know I told you where I come from. You know, Ruck, I know where you come from. There used to be something called battles. You know what I'm saying? Back, it still happens today, right? You have, Drake, Kendrick Lamar. That's a big thing, right? But back in the day, we had a lot of rap beefs. Nowadays I'm seeing bishops and pastors going at each other.
That's true.
I'm seeing a lot of things moving, and I'm like, man, this reminds me of the '90s. This reminds me
Yeah.
of this reminds me of the '90s. Everybody coming out swinging. It's very interesting out here. And so I kind of wanted to touch on just a few things, man, and just to kind of go over some of the things that we talked about, man. And I think it's important. I think you bring a lot of knowledge to this subject.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess let's start here. Where do you see, right, the state of Christianity? Where do you see that is right now? What do you see?
Well, I mean, I have to keep it. Yeah, I mean, I would put my perspectives on it, but I also have to put the Bible first because that's our guide. So, the Bible talks about a number of things. The Bible talks about a great falling away. Bible talks about men becoming lovers of themselves. Now, that's most likely a multifaceted statement, but I'm gonna keep it politically correct for now in that regard because so that's why you're seeing what you're seeing. Even certain pastors not hesitating to call out another pastor on the pulpit, not hesitating to call somebody out their name on the pulpit. And I coined the term where I have a problem with preachers, whether it be pastors, evangelists, or keynote speakers that speak at church events. I have a problem when pastors, what I would call, weaponize the pulpit. And what I mean by that is you take
Mm-hmm.
your personal beefs and your personal disagreements with somebody else, and you don't preach the gospel to uplift. You come and preach at somebody to
Mm-hmm.
let them know that you don't like what they're doing, or you probably just don't like them at all. I'll give you a perfect example of what happened to me when I was back in the day. I mean, of course, I'm giving away my age. I don't know if y'all can see the grays, but to me,
Nah, man.
the grays are a badge of honor. So I'll
I
be
don't
real.
see him like that, Mr. C. I don't know what you're doing over there, though. I don't know what you're doing. You could see mine a little more than yours. That's crazy. I don't know. I gotta talk to you a lot about what you're doing.
So, so what happened was one time I was when I was an intern on the West Coast at this big computer company. I was going to a church out there. I was going to a holiness church. And it was, if you will, it was a black holiness church out it was in the hood. It was in East Palo Alto. So if you know the West Coast, and you out there now. So I don't know if you've been visited EPA yet, but if you visit EPA, you're gonna see how real it is out there. So we out there in East Palo Alto, which is a town. Palo Alto is where Stanford University is. So I was on the east side, which is a rough part of town. So they had a church out there. It still exists, but it's under the Kojic network, Church of God
Right.
in Christ. It's called New Sweet Home. Shout out to the late Pastor Macklin. I mean, he passed away years ago, but he was the pastor at the time. And I'm not trying to cause no beef when I say this, but this really happened. So what happened was I'm in their Sunday school, right? And they separate men, little boys, little girls, grown men, grown women. The men would be in their separate Sunday school from the women. So the deacon is teaching a Sunday school class. And he asked the question. He said, if you see the pastor doing something wrong, would you address him or would you leave it alone?
Mm-hmm.
So for some reason, my hand go up. I said, I'm in trouble now. I know what's gonna happen. So I said, so he said, yes, young man, what are your thoughts? I said, well, if God speaks to me and leads me to say something, I will. But if not, I'm not going to say nothing, right? Because I understand the seriousness of addressing a pastor and you're parishioner or you're not, you know, clergy. This minister raised his hand, screaming, shouting, saying it. Nope, nope, you're not a minister. You're not part of the clergy. You don't address the pastor. And I said, I'm going to say it again. Not that I would. I'm just saying, like, that was the thought. Like, if God
Mm-hmm.
leads me to do something, I will. But if he doesn't, then I have nothing to say or add to the situation.
Right.
Man, this guy was going bananas. And what had happened was
What had happened?
that pastor came out on the pulpit and he was saying some things which I knew he was addressing me. He
Mm-hmm.
was like, you don't got to wait till you get to New York City to see no crime, you know what I mean? And I was like, oh, okay. All right. So he threw some stuff out there to let me know he didn't appreciate
Right.
my disposition, you know. And the reason why I had that thought, even as a young man, is because we are not to worship any vessel. We're
Mm-hmm.
not to worship a pastor above God. We're not to worship a bishop or an archbishop above God. We're not to worship an evangelist. We're not to worship any fivefold above God. We are to respect and honor them, but not to the point where we're putting them on a pedestal above the God we serve. So again, this is why I have an issue with pastors or anybody in the fivefold um, weaponizing the
Mm-hmm.
pulpit just because they think they have an office to be able to talk down to a person and make them feel less than. That is not the
Mm-hmm.
place of anybody in the fivefold, whether it's a reverend, a bishop, or an archbishop. That's just where I said. If some bishop out there don't like what I'm saying, I'm here. I'm not running anywhere. You can come at me anytime. And throughout and toward the end of the this conversation, I will give my social media information out so to let you know, if you will, I'm here for the smoke. I'm here for the beef. But when it comes to truth that I know is biblical and Bible based, I'm here for the smoke.
We know because we don't duck smoke, but that's another topic for another day. Um, you know, in I'm seeing a lot of things in the pulpit. A lot of politics in the pulpit. A lot of terms being used, I think, by preachers, um, or just people in the church, or period, all right, or people who call themselves Christians, right? I dub them as Christian nationalists, right? Who always use the term woke. Um,
Oh, you gonna go there on me early?
you
Wow!
know, you know, Mr. C, what it takes so long to book you, I kind of like to just go right into it. Or I kind of, I kind of like to just go right on in. I don't know when I'm gonna get this chance again, you know.
Oh, you
Um,
gotta have plenty of opportunity. I'm always here for you, man.
you know, I see politics being weaponized from the pulpit. I'm seeing terms being used. I'm seeing things happening from the pulpit that it sometimes could be disheartening, right? And also flat out wrong, especially if you don't use terminology correctly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and sometimes, especially when it comes to this DEI subject, where a lot of this stuff is incorrect of what's going on and who's benefiting, who's not benefiting from DEI, right? All this stuff from the pulpit. I'm seeing a lot of just things where we're no longer separating church and state. It's becoming one. Me, I'm of the ilk of me. I'm a born again Christian. That's me, right? But also, I feel that the United States is a place where you can do it. If you're a Muslim, you can practice that. It's not my thing. It doesn't matter to me, right? You do you, right? That's to me. That's the land we were supposed to be born here, right? Where you can practice whatever it is that you want, if that's your thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm not gonna have anything to say about it. I know some good Muslim brothers, right? Who do, just because there's differences of religion, they still solid people, and so I'm finding there's a shift now in this whole situation with the pulpit and politics, right? And there's being weapons from the pulpit being pointed at a lot of people at this point, right? And some of these same people are the same people giving their last and tithes and offerings and all of those things, right? And those are the people that I feel are being pointed at, right? Being ostracized to a point, right? And these are the people that keeps the church running, right? These are the people who give. These are the people who work in the church. These are people who sweep the church grounds. These are the people who do a lot of the work,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm seeing a lot of things, right, that is is unsettling to me in my
Mm-hmm.
heart and my spirit, right?
Right.
Um, and to that you say what?
Well, first thing, um, you kind of have to probably look at it from two different standpoints.
Mm-hmm.
You have a lot of pastors who paid their dues before they became established men and women of faith. They were out there doing whatever it took to get their churches off the ground and feed their families in the same breath. I respect where they're coming from with certain opinions. I'm not saying I agree with everything they say.
Mm-hmm.
I can actually respect where they're coming from. Who I have a problem with, honestly, is some, if you will, pastors or assistant pastors who never grinded for anything. They never built nothing. And they feel like their opinion means something. Personally, it don't mean nothing to me. So when they say something, I don't have to take them seriously because some of them never worked for anything. They never built anything. They never paid their dues to do anything. They never went out there and did anything in the mission field. Everything was some of them. Everything was handed to them. And honestly, when it comes to ministry, they were born with a silver spoon in their mouth. So I don't have to take them seriously and be offended by what they say because it doesn't hold any weight to me.
Mm-hmm.
I watched our fathers grind. I watched our fathers live. I watched our fathers be part of the building programs in churches that they've gone to. I watched my father go out and preach and be a blessing to small churches throughout New York City. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
Queen. I watched it. I've
Mm-hmm.
I've I've heard of him going overseas to preach and impacting lives. So when I'm not saying I know everything about ministry, but I know a thing or two about ministry, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know who to take seriously
Mm-hmm.
and who to basically say I'm just gonna take it as a grain of salt.
Mm-hmm.
And that so when it comes to like the subjects of DEI, to me,
Wokeness.
you've had to work. To me, you've had to work a little bit. You've had to get out there and grind a little bit to know a thing or two. If you haven't
Mm-hmm.
been in the workforce and you call yourself preaching, you never worked and never felt what the common man felt like. I don't have to take you seriously because you don't know what it's like to go out there and take the train to Midtown Manhattan amongst people that are sitting next to you with coming from all kinds of situations. You don't have to deal with that every day. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
not taking you seriously if you've never been there.
Mm-hmm.
You've never been there, so I don't have to take you seriously. So when it comes to DEI and who should work and who shouldn't work, if you haven't worked, you really shouldn't be putting your mouth in this conversation. That's just how I feel about it. I'm sorry. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I'm sorry. Now I know biblically, the Levites, the Levite tribe in the Old Testament, a lot of them didn't work because they had to work in the temple. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you coming out and you talking about stuff you know not of, this is why I had to post a post about
Mm-hmm.
woke. Somebody posted a post from the Christian hip hop genre, and he said, what did he say? I could read it, but basically,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just paraphrase. He said that basically you shouldn't have to apologize for being white, and he put a hashtag on it that wokeness is an illness, and I'm like, what? And honestly, I did the rudimentary thing because I never really looked up what woke meant. I kind of know what it means
Mm-hmm.
as an African American in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, woke is being in a position where you're progressing, you want to improve, and you have social awareness. Now, the definition I looked up basically says social awareness against racism, but I wouldn't even want to even just minimize it there. You have social awareness. That's the key.
Mm-hmm.
So what's wrong with anybody, whether it's African American, whether it's a Caucasian person, an Asian, an East
Mm-hmm.
Indian, American Indian? What's wrong with anybody having social awareness?
Awareness. Facts.
What's wrong with that? And if the church is speaking against that, I have a problem with that because basically we're all, I mean, the church we grew up in, they say God wants to bless you spiritually, physically, and financially. So you have to kind of have an awareness.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to be successful financially, you have to have an awareness. If you're going to be physically fit, you have to have an awareness.
Mm-hmm.
If be able to spend time in the Word of God, communicate with God, and I go all the way and say, if you want to hear His voice, you have to have spiritual awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So where is the lie
Mm-hmm.
and the wokeness? Where is the how can I say? Where is the discrepancy and being woke?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if let's just keep it on us a minute.
Mm-hmm.
If what we're doing is hating on the white man, just hate on the white man, then
Mm-hmm.
okay, I get that. Then okay, then I'll agree with you. Now, if you just having hateful, just blood boiled hatred running through your veins against every other race but your own, that's what racism is. I agree
Mm-hmm.
with that. But if you're gonna sit here and tell me that being socially aware, so I can progress, elevate, and grow as and this goes to anybody, but in this case, as a black man in America, if you have a problem with that, then I gotta look at you kind of funny
Mm-hmm.
and say something's wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with me for wanting to grow and wanting to improve. Something's wrong with you for trying to stomp on my rise. Now I have a problem with you, and I'm gonna have to basically love you from a distance. That's what
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna have to do. So then basically, I just basically said not too long ago that some of our brothers and sisters, there's nothing wrong with shutting up, especially if you don't know what you're talking about. And that's why
Mm-hmm.
I responded with that Facebook post recently
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of church folk are getting the word woke. They getting it twisted and they getting it all the way messed up. And they need
Mm-hmm.
to stop with the lies and stop trying to paint black people as villains for wanting to grow, wanting to expand, wanting to mature, wanting to be successful in ways that this race has never been successful before. If you have a problem with that, then I
Mm-hmm.
don't care who's listening right now that know me. If you have a problem with that, I don't know if we need to be friends. I don't know if we need to be rocking together. You just might need to just go your separate ways and have a nice life. That's just where I'm sitting right now. I'm saying it. We're here.
Mm-hmm.
I
It
can't
is
be
what it
afraid.
is.
I can't be afraid to say it because I'm not just speaking for me. I'm speaking for your godchildren.
Mm-hmm.
I'm speaking for my son. I'm
Mm-hmm.
speaking for my nieces and nephews who are coming up next.
Mm-hmm.
So they need to be aware. They
Right.
need to be able to progress, grow, and constantly improve and constantly learn.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing wrong with being woke when it comes to what we're talking about. We're not saying wipe out the white race. We're not saying wipe out the Chinese race. We're not saying wipe out the American Indians. We're just saying we want to grow. Now, history, now that we're on Black History Month, hello.
Yes,
See, I
this is
didn't
being
want to go
recorded
there.
during Black History Month, so understand that.
So now we talking about wiping out plenty of history that said that during what Black Wall Street era, where people wearing nice suits, wearing derbies, you know what I'm saying, owning stores, owning businesses, living in nice homes, driving nice cars. Some people had a problem with that, and what did they try to do? We said we don't want to wipe nobody out, but somebody sure try to wipe us. You know what I mean? So, and furthermore, there are now powers that be in the United States of these United States of America that say, "Hey, we need to do away with Black History Month,"
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, can't
And
even
what
teach
I
it in
say to
schools.
that is, even if you take it away, um, and dare I say this, I went to a high school with probably like 95 or more percent Caucasian people, which is not a knock, it's not an indictment. But to be honest with you, I didn't start learning about deeper Black history and literature class and stuff like that till I went to college. I'll be the first
Hmm.
to tell you that, right?
Hmm.
Now in college, and I'm going somewhere with this. I
Hmm.
learned about Zora Neale Hurston. That's one of the. I mean, I can't remember all the content, but Their Eyes Like Watching God is one of the best novels I've ever read. It was fire, right? Claude McKay, a poet and entertainer, was an activist from Jamaica, and he stood up for the disenfranchised in this country and paid the heaviest price and got deported for standing up. They don't
Mm.
talk about this in high school. They don't talk about this in middle school. They might talk about this at HBCU, which I never attended, but they don't talk about this in most schools.
Nope.
What else? They don't talk about the fact that during Prohibition, that African Americans tried to rise up and make money with what was deemed illegal booze and illegal beverages,
Hmm.
and the Italians and others came and knocked them off their high horse.
Hmm.
Numbers, another thing in Harlem, knocked them out their high horse. So they don't talk about this thing. So truthfully, I don't think any of us should stop talking about the Booker T. Washingtons and the W.E.B. Du Bois, because without them,
Hmm.
there will be no HBCU. There will be no Howard. There will be no Spelman. There would be
Hmm.
no Morehouse. There will be no Florida AMU. There will be no Grambling. There will be no
Mm.
Alcorn State. There will be
Mm.
no Fayetteville State where my mother went and got her bachelor's degree. Fayetteville State
Hmm.
University of Fayetteville, North Carolina. There will be no Shaw University where a lot of hip hop heads that do radio went and got their college education.
Hmm.
So we need, not because of being a racist, we need to understand the foundation of where we're at and why we are successful now as business,
Hmm.
as IT professionals, as
Mm.
healthcare professionals, as
Hmm.
ministers, as retail business owners, whatever path, as athletes. Without these people, without W.E.B. Du Bois, I'm not saying this above God. Let me
Right.
help
No, of course.
understand that. But I'm just talking about Black history. Without W.E.B. Du Bois, without Booker T. Washington, without Frederick Douglass, without Zora Neale Hurston, without Medgar Evers, without Dr. Martin Luther King. Obviously, that is the staple of Black History Month. We know
Hmm.
that. But there's other names that I can't even say I'm going to tell you I know. And we're still today um, expanding on Black history. I met a brother that, well, first of all, I went to Hicksville High School, which is on
Hmm.
Long Island, Nassau County.
Hmm.
And that's the same high school that Billy Joel went to. The
Hmm.
year I graduated, he was at the graduation receiving his honorary degree.
Hmm.
I would say a Black historical fact. I was probably one of the first to play varsity basketball for 4 years. It doesn't mean I was the greatest thing since sliced bread, but these are things that led to another brother we met years later. My brother was up in New York. You know, he
Hmm.
was up in New York. He was visiting, and we ran to this brother in the park, in the same town. And it turned out this guy was the first African American from our high school to be conference player of the year, and in the conference. So there's always Black history, breaking. I think my brother was probably one of the first African Americans to run track at the height of the level he did in high school, and then
Hmm.
he went on to be a great Division II college runner himself in his own right.
Hmm.
So there's always, a sense of Black history budding and evolving and expanding, and we just have to. We need to celebrate it. Matter of fact, one thing that I appreciate, and I never pledged a college fraternity, but I know you knew. You probably saw this a couple years ago in the news. The AKA sorority opened up a bank.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you know that. So Black history is beautiful.
Uh-huh.
It's beautiful to see. So this idea that wokeism is a problem, I think people need to, put on a different pair of glasses or put on a different pair of lenses and reevaluate what they're saying. It is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And it's not people saying, I'm colored or I'm Black or I'm African American, so I just deserve it because of my melanin. People are
Uh-huh.
striving for excellence regardless of this. They're just striving for excellence in science. And it's all stems and entertainment and athletics. They're just striving. It doesn't matter what the colors based on the history that we had to be 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 times better than everybody else just to be able to get in on the ground floor is
Uh-huh.
what drives us to keep striving to be successful. And it's never gonna stop. We are not going to apologize for it. We're not going anywhere. And if people don't like that, oh
It
well.
is what it is. And
It
I
is what
think
it is.
in the term woke, um, because I had to look it up too, because it says, has been used in Black culture since 1938 and was used in the Black Power movement in Harlem, right? And it's been used to obviously encourage Black people, right, to be aware of social issues, obviously, and speak out against injustice. And it also comes from a singer, right? He was a folk singer named Huddy Ledbetter, right? He was known as Leadbelly, right, in 1938, right? And after one of his songs, right, I think it's called Scottsboro Boys, right? He
Mm-hmm.
advised the people to stay woke in his song as they were traveling through Alabama,
Right.
right? So, so when you, so now fast forward almost 80 something years later,
Almost 100 years later, basically.
right?
Yeah.
We're flipping the term
Mm-hmm.
wokeness and we're weaponizing it, right? As if this is a bad thing to stay woke. And it's not, right? It's not. And when you look at all of we're talking Black history, we're looking at what government's trying to do with Black, education, teaching Black history in schools, things like that. Oh, if you teach anything like that, then we're going to pull federal funding,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's a lot of things, right, as we're trying to evolve and learn and put more African American studies in schools, right? Now, at this point, it's like, oh, nope, can't do that because we can't educate them. We can't tell them about the Tulsa massacre. Oh no.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, we can't tell them about Tulsa. That we can definitely not tell them about the Tulsa massacre and what happened with that. Right? We can't say that, oh, in order to be a part of the KKK, you have to be what? A Christian. That's besides the point, right? Um right? The people who did Tulsa massacre, a lot of them were Christian. Okay. Right? We can't teach this in school because then they'll learn. Then
Mm-hmm.
they'll be educated. Why can't we just move along? Why can't we
Mm-hmm.
just move? Why can't we just, hey, that didn't, don't worry about that. We got to move forward. You guys are slaves now, so we got to move forward. You gonna tell the Jews that?
Oh boy. They're not ready for that
I
conversation,
dare
T.
you to do it. I dare you to say to the Jews what you say to us. It's not
I'm
gonna
just gonna
happen.
put it,
It's not gonna
I'm,
happen.
I'm, I'm gonna put this out there. The Jews are doing things in excellence. They
Yes.
got schools.
Yes.
They have they like in Brooklyn, they got their own buses,
Yes.
their own schools. They
Yes.
have they have Crown Heights. You from New York, so you know what I'm talking about.
They move
And
different.
by the way, when it comes to civil rights issues, even on some of the platforms I'm on, it's actually surprising what people don't know about things that happen in our state, in our city, in our metro.
Yeah.
They just don't know. They don't
No
know.
clue.
It's just like we don't know everything that happened in Chicago. Probably what happened in Chicago or St. Louis or whatever. A lot of people don't know the stuff that happened in New York. So when you tell when people And I know it's probably like a different context or whatever back in the day, but with the Central Park Five, for example, people were asking for their heads to be put on a chopping block.
Mm-hmm. Death
I don't
penalty.
know. I don't know if I want to say the name. I don't want. Should I just say the fruit? But the dude with that fruit, that the name that they say, the Orange, Agent Orange, was the first one, right?
Mm-hmm.
A
And
lot of
people
people
will
don't,
will make excuses for that too, by the way.
right, but a lot of people don't know that that happened.
Mm-hmm.
I talk to even other Christian brothers across the country, black and white. They don't know this stuff happened in New York.
No.
They don't know that Yusuf Hawkins just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time in
Wrong time.
Bensonhurst. Some Italians didn't like it, and he just got gunned down for being black in Bensonhurst. They don't know that happened in 1989. I was 16 years old, the same age, so that hit me hard,
Mm-hmm.
right? They don't know that Sean Bell was
Mm-hmm.
just going to a strip club to have a good time with his boys the night before his wedding and got shot 50 times. They don't know this.
Mm-hmm.
People from across the country don't know this stuff that happened in New York, and they wonder, and they probably like, New Yorkers protest so hard. Why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? I had to actually explain to a dear friend of mine who's Polish, and my friend it was actually his father. We were having conversations about race, and I love this man, and we were having conversations, and
Mm-hmm.
he actually told me, and he's not a racist bone in his body, by the way, but he
Mm-hmm.
didn't understand with all the stuff that happened um, with a lot of the protests across the country. He said, "Why do black people tear up their own neighborhoods? I don't get it." And I had to actually explain this to him. And maybe I never heard nobody else explain it like this, but I explained it to him like this. I said, "Listen, people are tired and they're angry, and they're basically saying, if we can't enjoy the neighborhood, neither can they." That's the attitude. So that's
Mm-hmm.
why when people they just black out and they burn buildings and stuff like that. If we can't enjoy the neighborhood, if we can't get fresh food, if we can't get treated properly, and I'm not condoning this, but that's the attitude. Like, then nobody can. We're gonna burn this down,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the attitude. And she's like, "Wow." I'm like, "That's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is." Well, they're not gonna be able to get food. They're not gonna be like a lot of stuff they wasn't getting anyway. That's how they feel. They wasn't getting it anyway. So why should the businesses? And again, please, I want the audience to understand, I am not condoning violence. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just basically explaining what the situation is from the standpoint of people that live in these communities where these things are happening. That's how they felt at the time, and they executed these acts of destruction based on how they felt like they were being ill treated. That's what it
Mm-hmm.
is.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to like it. It's ugly. It sounds horrible, but it is the God's honest truth. And you know what? And I can say that based on somebody that's living. Listen, the Northerners, and I'm gonna put this out there. I don't care who don't like it. A lot of you Northerners, I'm about to just come out and say it. A lot of you Northerners that are Republican, you have no idea what really being Republican is like unless you live down south. You have no idea. When I was living in North Carolina as a kid, look him up, Jesse Helms. He ruled North Carolina with an iron fist. When I was a child in North Carolina, you walk into stores in the hood, the food was already spoiled on the counters. This is in the 80s, by the way. This wasn't in the 40s. This is in the 80s. Food was already spoiled on the counters in the store, and they were still selling it.
Mm-hmm.
This is what the Republican Party was doing down south, even in the 80s. And a lot of you Northern Republicans have no idea. Just throwing it out there. And I'm not saying the Democrats are any better, but I can tell
Well,
you, hands down.
I think there's a difference between Republicans, Democrats, and should I say MAGA? I think I feel like MAGA is like a third party, even
Mm-hmm.
though it's not. I feel like it is, right? Right? Like it just feels different, right? It feels like a lot of aggression, especially when it comes
Right.
to how far we've come, right? And when it comes to civil rights and when it comes to things like that, right? And what grinds my gears sometimes is this whole notion. and I see it from the pulpit, and I see, and it's mirrored. It comes from the government, and then it's spewed out in the pulpit.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
we don't see color. Jesus doesn't see color.
Yeah,
We,
okay.
we want you guys to earn your merit and, you know, and get it because you're qualified.
Mhm.
Let me tell you something. Nobody in that White House right now is qualified. I don't care what you say. When you look at whether you like her, whether you don't, you can't tell me Kamala Harris is not qualified. She's educated, highly educated,
Oh no,
right?
she was a DEI hire. I'm sorry.
Right. These are the White House press secretary, the one that we had before, highly educated. The one that we have now, I don't know. Um,
Yeah.
but but what I'm saying is, right? There's a difference between being qualified and having access to money. Elon Musk, is he qualified or does he have money? Right? We
Ah,
talk about qualifications versus money, right? So they ran a campaign saying it's equality for everyone because we want everybody to get a job or that is only qualified. A lot of these people aren't qualified. Let's run
right.
around a White House, right? They're not. They have money,
Right. 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 Right.
right? Think about Donald Trump with no money. He wouldn't be at the White House. He couldn't campaign,
Mhm.
right? Like you can't, like it's just not realistic,
Right.
right? But it's money, right? So that's why when you see at the inaugurations and stuff, who's front and center?
Mhm.
The owners of the tech companies, Google, Meta, right? Tesla, like
Like,
that's that's
and,
where it is.
and you also have to call it what it is as far as like certain initiatives I don't agree with. I'm not saying every Republican should go to hell. I'm just talking about certain issues with
Yeah,
that they push, right? And I mean, we can talk about the Democrats too, because they have certain initiatives that's like, what are you doing?
of
Stop it,
course.
right? But
Mm-hmm.
in the state of Florida, my brother lives in Florida, and of course, um, anytime you learn about in history any regime when it comes to totalitarianism or
Mm-hmm.
dictatorship,
Mm-hmm.
the first lesson they teach you is once you control the media, you got the people. And why that's
Mm-hmm.
important? Because in the state of Florida, Governor DeSantis is trying to control, if you will, the media, meaning
Mm-hmm.
what we read, what our children are reading. Nope, you can't have this book. Nope, you can't have this book. Nope, nope, nope. Oh no, 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 no critical race theory. No this theory. No that. And then I saw the news reports. I mean, untold thousands of books and bins because they're trying to control the ebb and flow of information.
Of
That's a very
course.
that's a very dangerous practice.
Of
That's a
course.
dangerous. I'll give you a perfect example. I'll give you a perfect example.
Mm-hmm.
My wife's One of my wife's uncles passed away several months ago, right? And so we're at the repast at my in-laws in Brooklyn. Perfect example. You're gonna love this. So one of her cousins is down from Toronto, Canada, right? Now there's nothing wrong with not liking a candidate. That's the American way.
Mm-hmm.
And in general, that's democracy. You
Mm-hmm.
should have the right to be able to and I stress analytically break down why you don't like a candidate based
Mm-hmm.
on facts or based on general information. Whether it's true or not is a whole other thing. But the flow of information about the candidate, certain things you watch on TV, certain sound bites, certain quotes should lead you to basically say, okay, I agree with this, I disagree with that for either candidate. In this case, it was now President Trump and at the time candidate Harris.
Mm-hmm.
She says, I don't like when we talk about politics. Oh, I don't like her. So we're like, why? Why? I don't know. I just don't like her. I just don't like her. I'm like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm waiting for the information based on what she heard back from her home country, like what leads her to believe that she's not the right, which is fine, right? She couldn't give me anything. So we flipped it. My father-in-law and I flipped it on her. Said, let me ask you a question. Have you ever heard of Project 2025? No. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
That means Canada, in my opinion, I might be wrong, this is just my opinion, is doing a pretty good job controlling the flow of information.
Mm-hmm.
Leads her to have what? A biased view
Mm-hmm.
of the political scene in
Mm-hmm.
the United States of America. And that is another reason to me, internationally, is why there was more of an influence. And either way, I mean, I guess I'm not invested either way, but I'm just talking the game from where I sit. That was more of an influential reason why Donald Trump did ultimately win by a landslide to get into the White House, because the flow of information from other countries had him looking like a savior. And also that same flow of information had Kamala Harris automatically, without research, without any knowledge of what she's done in the state of California, agree or disagree, look like a demon. By
Yep.
default. You know what
Well,
I'm saying?
and I think when you look at certain things of right, the pulpit, politics, I think it was Paula White who just came out. Well, I don't know if he just came out, but there's a clip running around of her saying, if you disagree with that, Donald Trump, then you're going against God. You listen, you know,
Oh, stop.
and she was just appointed to the White House, by the way. And
Oh, and for the second time, I might add.
yes,
For the
right.
second.
So, and then I think there was a tweet today from Trump because he said that he was ending the congestion pricing in New York or whatever the case is, and then
Oh yeah,
at the end of
somebody
the
told me
tweet,
earlier.
he
Yeah.
said, "I am king," or something like that. Right. So we have this thing, right? And this is where, to me, it's not about Republicans or Democrats because there was a time, even if you didn't like a Republican, it was different. There was a different
Right.
feeling.
Right. Yeah.
There was a different aura. There was respect. There was just things that
Yeah.
were just different.
Agreed.
And,
Agreed.
and you could
Agreed.
even say, you know what? I may not agree with him politically, but good guy, right? Like cool guy, right? Good. It is what it is. Um, and so now it just seems very different. That's why I say I feel like MAGA is it's a different party than the
Well,
Republican Party. It feels
well,
very different.
I see why you said that, because even when my all-time favorite Republican in my lifetime so far, I'm going to say it's John McCain.
Incredible,
Why?
incredible.
Because of the even if he didn't agree with your politics, he still respected you. And where there was a reason to, he still admired you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So even if he was running against you, like, okay, he was on a he was at a campaign stop. I can't remember what city he was in, and he was doing a town hall.
Yes, yeah, I remember
Um,
this. Yeah,
and the woman was like, I can't stand Obama. I mean, I'm not saying I'm quoting her. And
yeah.
he was like, well, what's the problem? And it was the most racist, most ignorant thing I've heard probably at that time in politics. And she was like, he's an Arab. Like,
And
what?
said that he's not American, but guess who started that? Guess who
What?
started that?
I
Who started
was
that?
like, yo, it was so jarring. I was like, wow, what?
But who
Really?
started that though, Mr. C? The birther. Who started that? The
Orange
man
man.
that's in the White House right now.
Orange man. Because he kept on asking for proof that Barack Obama is a United States citizen. I remember that. That was his I think that was in the middle of his first term. He was asking because he didn't want him to. I guess he didn't want him to win the second term, right?
Of course not.
So when that woman said that, and then John McCain was like, we're not doing that here. We're not going to do that. He shut her down,
Respect. Yeah.
and I'm like, boom, respect,
Dignity and respect. That's what
respect.
to me, that's what it is. To me, that's when I love politics. I think I
So
was
when you
like,
can, so you could be a Democrat or you can be a Republican,
mm-hmm,
but you don't have to be a. I was going to say something else, but you don't have to be a dirtbag. You don't
mm-hmm.
have to. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to be a dirtbag.
You
You know what I'm
don't.
saying? And you have a lot of dirtbags on both sides. And in this case,
Absolutely.
the MAGA clan looking like a bunch of dirtbags because of the stuff they spew. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, where a lot of diversity work of people of diverse ethnicities work, you're gonna say Because DEI is basically saying we respect you no matter what color you are. If you have the qualifications, we want to consider you for employment, right?
Right, right.
You're gonna go to major corporations that employ a diverse workforce and tell them DEI is no longer respected. You're gonna go to a place like Target, tell them don't respect it. You're gonna go to Walmart. You're gonna go to, and I'm hearing on the street that there's certain things that there's repercussions that's already
It's already
materialized.
happening. Yes, yes.
Yo, listen, my wife went to Walmart and she came back. She was like, "Babe," she was like, "You gotta see these prices." I'm like, "Mm-hmm. Keep it up.
You know, it's
Keep
it's
it
a
up.
it's
Go ahead."
amazing to me because when you think about DEI, right? But when you think about these terms that now is being weaponized as so bad, the
Mm-hmm.
reason why we had diversity, equity, inclusion is because we we a lot of black people were so qualified but never got the job. The most educated but never got the job. The most experienced but never got the job. People like
Mm-hmm.
people like Trump and Elon got those jobs, right? Because guess what? I don't know what this sounds like to you, but if a black man has 30 something felonies, he ain't getting no job.
Come on now. Come on now. Come
Obama
on now.
couldn't get if he had one felony, he wouldn't sniff the White House.
Listen, man,
These are facts.
they were waiting for him, like they waiting for LeBron to make that major mistake. They were waiting for Obama to make that mistake, boy. They were
They
waiting.
blasted him for a beige suit.
What?
A beige suit
Listen.
they blasted him for.
Oh yeah, I remember that, Joe. Hey, and remember, because every president like to do what they like to do, right? Like, so for example, George H. No, not George H.W. George W. Bush would like to go back to Texas to a ranch. That's where he used to like to go when he wasn't in the
Mm-hmm.
White House. Let me think who else. I think like some of the past presidents like to go to Camp David when they was doing their, retreats and stuff like that, right? Not just for meetings, but they would like to go there for their R&R, right? President Trump like likes to go play golf at his clubs like in Mar-a-Lago
Mm-hmm.
and Jersey and all these places where he got properties, right?
Mm-hmm.
President Obama used to like to come to New York every once in a while during his presidency. He used to like to go to Broadway shows, if you remember, or off Broadway shows.
Mm-hmm.
And like, oh yeah, why is he wasting all the taxpayer money to go to New York to go? I'm like, dang man, come on, man, come on,
Let me tell you something, Mr. C.
bitch.
If we really have an honest conversation about race, if America closed their eyes and they had two candidates, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, and they closed their eyes and you gave them the statistics, one candidate has 34 felonies, multiple baby moms, facts. One wife, married for over 20 years, two beautiful daughters, not one scandal, no felonies, background clear. Which one was white? Which one was black?
They're gonna assume that what Obama was,
They
Trump. Yeah. Gotta call the
guaranteed.
list. Gotta call the
And when they
list.
opened their eyes, they would have been surprised.
Right.
Wait, what you mean? Oh, really? This,
That's why.
but
That's why. Back growing up, I used to like the taste test commercials. They tie the blindfold around the person's eyes. Try this soda. Try this soda. Which one is Mountain Dew, and which one's the leading brand? That one.
mm-hmm,
That one right there. Eyes closed. That one definitely tastes like Mountain Dew.
mm-hmm.
Bang. Yep. Because yeah.
And this is what I'm saying, right? But when the money's right, you can do a lot of things,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you can ignore a lot of things. Can you imagine on the right if Obama had 30 something felonies and tried to run for president? This is what we're talking about when we're talking about race. Oh, we don't see color. Really? Oh no, no, Jesus doesn't see. Oh no, no, us as the church.
Hey, listen.
I get so nauseated, Mr. C.
I have this conversation so many times with people I respect as ministers, including my own father, who taught me the foundation where I am of the Word of God and all that, and
Mm-hmm.
still teach.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still learning from him on phone conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And he has, and I'm just throwing it out there. He has this perspective spiritually that if you focus on color, that you're really not a child of God. And I always push back. I always push back. I'm like, if that's the case, then God should have created a man, everybody that looked the same,
Mm-hmm.
every flower that looked the same,
Mm-hmm.
every tree that looked the same, and every bush. So if that's the case, why did God create variety?
Mm-hmm.
Because variety is beautiful. I mean, imagine, and I'm not a big gardening,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
HGT
Yeah.
fan, but imagine going to a botanical garden like Queens has one,
Mm-hmm.
Bronx
Mm-hmm.
has a beautiful one, right? Imagine going there and only seeing green bushes.
Yeah.
I'd want my money back if I was to go there and pay whatever $20 to go see a botanical garden, and then that
Mm-hmm.
day they only have evergreen trees, they have pine trees, everything, every type of green tree, just green trees, and they didn't have tulips, they didn't have roses, they didn't have daffodils, they didn't have the different beautiful variety of colored bushes. They didn't have the little small flowers running low on the ground, towing the line of the sidewalk. Like, what are you kidding me? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, so if God can create a variety of flowers and He can create a variety of trees, then what is wrong with appreciating a variety of ethnicities? And I always go back at go at it like this. I might not want fried chicken, collard greens, and mashed potatoes tonight. Tonight, I might want to step to one of the pizza joints and have lasagna,
Mm-hmm.
have fettuccine alfredo. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow night I might want to have Korean food. Maybe Saturday night I might want to have some Russian food. Maybe Sunday night I might want to have some Indian food. That's the beautiful thing about diversity. You don't have to be boxed in.
Yeah.
And that's why I'll never agree. Oh, well, if you see color, you must not really be saved, and you must not have the anointing, and you don't have the power of God on your life. The devil is a liar.
Mm-hmm.
The devil is a liar. Because even back in the Old Testament, there was variety. Moses was with a black woman to start as a perfect example,
Mm-hmm.
right? You had the 12 tribes of Judah. I'm pretty sure they wasn't all white.
Mm-hmm.
What are we talking about? What are we
There,
talking about?
there's so much manipulation, unfortunately, I find with Christian nationalism. And I'm vehemently opposed to it. I'm not saying Mr. C is opposed to it. That's T-Till saying. I'm vehemently opposed to Christian nationalism. I'm opposed to anything that's extreme, right? Because then it becomes a problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Any religion, right? When you have Islamic extremists, it's a problem, right? Like when you have Christian nationalist extremists, it's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
These are problems because the manipulation is to say, oh, we don't see color. Come on. The reason why you're opposing DEI is because DEI exposed what we all know. There's a lot more, there are more qualified minorities that are getting opportunities now, right? And that is a problem for a certain demographic of people, right? Who've
Mm-hmm.
always been privileged to get those opportunities, whether they're qualified or not.
Mm-hmm.
That is
Mm-hmm.
a problem. So
Right.
now we see, oh, well, now DEI is a big problem. Why? Why? Because they're taking jobs that they should have. Taking jobs that they should have.
Well,
Mhm.
let's ask the rhetorical question. Throughout, and my stepmom was a nurse for over 40 years. She
Mhm.
practiced nursing. She started practicing nursing in the UK before she came to the United States. And so back in the 60s and the 70s, there was a shortage of nurses, and they were begging for nurses to come from all over the world to come and practice, the professionals of healthcare, nursing, and doctors and stuff like that from everywhere, right?
Mhm.
So if DEI is such an issue, why did you allow that to happen 40, 50, 60 years ago? Why was it important for people to come from Grenada, Jamaica, Trinidad to be nurses? Because a lot of Caribbean women are nurses. We know what
Mm-hmm.
this is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that a lot of doctors, because they probably had shortage of doctors coming from India, coming from Pakistan, coming from wherever, coming from different countries around the world to practice medicine? Why was DEI not an issue then, and it is now? If it was such an issue,
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't allow it to happen 70 years ago.
And why are we only looking to deport certain people from certain countries, but we don't look at Europe? We don't look at a lot of things. We're
Right? I
looking
mean,
to deport people of color out of this country, Hispanics, right? Caribbeans, the Haitians, right?
oh,
Like
for entertainment purposes, I got to go there now. I'm gonna do
I'm
it
just saying, man. Like this is,
now.
come
They're
on, man.
eating the
Yeah,
dogs.
right.
They're eating the cats.
You know,
They're eating all your pets. Oh, I'm sorry.
everything, bro.
I don't have orange hair, so if I probably didn't pull it off.
It, and these are the people, these vicious
Oh,
people, right? But who, somebody's wife, I don't know. I could be mistaken, but somebody's wife ain't not even from here. I don't know. I could be wrong. I don't even think the leader of Tesla, I don't think he's from here neither. I don't know. I could be wrong about all of those things. But there's a certain type of person, certain type of people that we're attaching these labels to. Murderers, rapists, thugs, right? And we're sending them back to their country, right? But we're not
but it,
touching a certain but we're not touching a certain demographic though of illegals. We're not
isn't
doing
it
that.
isn't it
No.
interesting that the powers that be that talk about people raping people are always the one brought up on accusations of sexual misconduct. I'm just saying. I'm just throwing it out there. you
The
know,
current the
that's
current
why
prez, the
that's
current
why the
prez.
Bible that's why the Bible is so important. The Bible is so important about the New Testament talks about getting the beam out of your eye. In other words, worry about living your balanced life and stop pointing the finger and worrying about what somebody else is doing. This is a perfect example of what that says. You know, getting the beam out of your eye before you try to get the beam out of somebody else's eye. And that's why in this country we're having so many problems from the political spectrum to even the organized church, business, and sports. There's so many problems because everybody's always doing this. This finger works 90% of the time. But you know what finger that should work 90% of the time?
Probably should, but I shouldn't say
This
it.
finger
Oh,
should work
okay.
90% of the time.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that wasn't the finger I was thinking about. But
No, I'm not talking about that finger. No, I'm not talking about flipping the bird. I'm saying the
instead of
first
look at me. Yeah.
the first level of accountability that should work is self accountability. We all
Mm-hmm.
need
Yes.
more now than ever before. But
Mm-hmm.
most of the time, we are looking to shame somebody else. We're looking to condemn somebody else. We're looking to tell somebody else they shouldn't be doing what they're doing. Perfect example. I'm not going to say the Christian rapper's name, but this big thing, news in Christian hip hop. This rapper supposedly, I'm gonna say allegedly because I don't know what's true and what's false.
Mm-hmm.
The rapper's wife came out with a video and she's like, "Oh, he cheated on me. He been doing this stuff for 13 years. He been doing this. He been doing that. He been doing it." And instead of certain Christian hip hop outlets just really investigating behind the scenes and basically praying for the person and basically trying to find out the facts. They aired the story like they were like they were world star. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, what are we doing? So you have an excellent question, an excellent point. Like, what has even the church come to these days? a lot of times, and I'm saying this as a person that's a minister, person that's absolutely not perfect. Saying this for a person that is a program director associated with a Christian hip hop website myself.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we so quick to air out somebody's dirty laundry?
Mm-hmm.
Where what the person needs and the people involved needs is compassion, and they need somebody to
Grace.
encourage them.
Mm-hmm.
I know another friend of mine who's going through something. I'm not going to air out his dirty laundry. I want to encourage him.
Yeah.
And I basically said, "Yo, I sincerely hope you and your wife get back together.
Mm-hmm.
They're separated
Yeah.
right now."
Yeah.
I'm like, somebody like, "Oh, look at what's happening with him. His marriage ain't working. He must have cheated on her." No, it's not a laughing matter because you know who's hurting in between? The children.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
So all these things that you're watching, what's more important? The desire to restore, uplift, and encourage, or sensationalism, a campaign for clicks, a
Mm-hmm.
campaign. I know we were talking about politics, but now I'm
Yeah.
asking, whoever's watching that's faith based and have a platform, don't be so quick to get likes and clicks at the expense of somebody's unfortunate events, because you never know when it's your turn.
And
Put it out there real quick.
and along that line, but a little different. Well, how come? And I always find this interesting, especially from Christian nationalists. When Black people get success or fame or accomplishments, right? Status, how come is that it always comes from the devil, the Illuminati, or oh, they must have slept their way to the top, or oh look, they got their money from the devil. But then when somebody that looks like them, a lot of times, oh, they surely worked hard. I
No,
I just no no
stop it,
no I
man!
just
Stop
no
it! No.
I just find these things very interesting because it's like, oh, when Black people get success, no, it's the Illuminati, it's the devil. You know what I mean? That's the only way they can get success. Or if they do something wrong, oh, and I don't understand these things, right? Because then it becomes a Christian thing, right? Then it becomes, oh, look at the devil. Oh my God, look at that. You see that? It's devil. But then when somebody that looks like them gets success, and he worked hard. Oh, wow.
Well, along the way, some of my personal favorite backstories. I'm not going to no name, no blame, but some people always ask my dad, "What country you from again? Ghana?" I'm just like, so you mean to tell me you went to high school, college, and you don't know your geography? So you don't know the difference between Ghana, West Africa, and Guyana, South America? So we still trying to figure this out. We still trying to figure this out. You don't know the difference between Ghana, West Africa, and Guyana, South America.
They don't care to know. They don't
So how
care to
many
know.
times you gonna ask this man what country is he from? I'm just throwing this out there as a joke because it's starting to get irritating, and I'm not even the one that's being asked this. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
How many times you gonna ask the same question?
Mm-hmm.
That's like me asking you, um, oh, which do you trace where do you trace back to? In Istanbul?
Mm-hmm.
And you're actually from Italy. So I'm gonna keep on asking you if you're from Istanbul, Turkey,
Mm-hmm.
and Italy, two different places. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it's mind blowing, the ignorance. Like how many times? Like Guyana, Ghana, GUGH. Like
Mm-hmm.
which how are we getting this mixed up? I'm just trying to understand that. You know what I'm saying? Just trying to understand.
I just be having these questions, Mr. C, of just how come when it's us, it's the devil. I don't know. I could be wrong. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
But
that's
whenever
listen. I don't care if you call it the KKK. I don't care if you call it Christian nationalism, the ideology. I don't care if you call it the Aryan Brotherhood. I don't care
Mhm.
what you call it. They're all cousins. they
Of the
don't
same
deviate,
family.
they don't deviate too far from each other. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? And it's funny when you look at the history of the KKK. Um, a lot of people don't know that one of the first Northeast chapters that was birthed was in Freeport, New York in 1954. I couldn't believe it when I did the research myself. I was
Mm.
like, hold on, what?
Mm.
So I live in a territory where the seeds were heavily planted.
That's crazy. And I have another question that you see.
Yeah, yeah.
Why do Christian nationalists always say or reference when it comes to uh, people of color crime that they only reference Chicago?
Oh my God. Don't even get me started with that, Joe. Don't
No,
even get
no,
me started.
I just like that's the only inner city. Or that, I don't know. I just always wondered that, like, right? That when they reference violence, they don't reference mass shooters, but they reference, um,
Why
you
are you
know,
doing this, man? Why
they
you putting me out here like this,
they
man?
reference Chicago. I just be asking because sometimes I don't understand, like, that's their only point of reference in the whole entire United States when it comes to crime, you know. But I don't know. These are the questions I'd be asking myself sometimes, Mr. Z. Like, Chicago
All
gets
I'm
a
gonna
bad
say,
rap.
well, the first thing I'm gonna say is a lot of people. I don't care what your ethnicity is. You might want to do your research on crime, on the real statistics in crime.
Yep,
Because if you go by what you hear, like the blah 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 blah, if you go by what you hear, you're gonna believe that
versus
black
stats.
people commit the most crime in this country, and that's the furthest thing from the truth.
And they're all in Chicago, and most
Oh yeah,
black
oh
people
yeah, oh yeah,
and
yeah, 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 and all the gun violence. The only place the gun violence happens is in Chicago,
yeah,
Illinois. I understand
yeah,
that.
and you know, we're the ones on welfare. Mm. Oh yeah, we're the ones on welfare. Statistically, do your research.
Yeah, I would
You'd be
say
surprised what you find.
it's
You'd be surprised what you find.
like Brian Bosworth was in that movie. He's like, you might not like what you find.
And that's why people probably don't want to do research. They want to live in the same bubble that they've always lived in.
Mm.
And like it's 1940, and it's like, do your research, baby. You
You
know
know
what
what's
I'm
crazy?
saying? Because guess what? If black people were so bad, I'm gonna tell you why I why back in the day, especially, were we allowed to raise your kids?
Oh wow, what a question. That's actually the question of the conversation right there. Dang, that was a bar. Yo, what? I wasn't ready for that,
You
G.
trusted us to raise your kids, live in your
Yo,
house,
that was a
raise
bar,
your
son.
kids.
That was a bar, son. That was a bar for real. That was a bar. Dang.
Just saying. You still ravaged it. So then wouldn't that be negligence? Like, wouldn't
I
that
wish
be,
I wish I was my DJ equipment right now. I definitely did.
because I think because you're a father. So if you knowingly had your kids babysat by somebody who you knew was so savage, right?
First of all,
And,
that
and
wouldn't happen.
uncouth, right?
First of all, that wouldn't
You would
happen.
get arrested.
Not
No,
knowingly. Not knowingly. First of all, that
but
would
this is
knowingly that wouldn't happen.
no, I know that. But what I'm saying though is you would face some kind of charges. Was it
Of course.
child endangerment
That's that's
or the
that's
welfare
that's
of a
that's
minor?
that's absolutely endangering the welfare
Right.
of a child.
So if we're
Hands down.
so ghetto, if we're so problematic, if we're so, just violent all the time, ravaging, why why would we go nannies? Why are we raising your kids while you out working back in the day? Why? Why? I would say why was we, you know, in the master's house with your wife? That's another conversation for another day. That's another
Oh,
conversation for another day. I ain't,
oh man,
I ain't
yo.
gonna do that. You
Why you
know,
doing this to me? Yo, T, why you doing this to me, man? Why you doing this to me, man?
I just be having questions sometimes, Mr. C, that sometimes I just think people they don't really have the answers to. You have some, you got the answers, but a lot of the other folks that I want to hear from don't have the answers. You know,
A lot of people don't want to have these conversations because it's easier, and I'm talking about, and in this case, I'm talking about people of faith. It's easier to say praise the Lord, go to church with the Bible, dance, clap, and shout and jump, shout, and say it, and run around the church 10 times than to have the conversations. Sure, you don't always have to agree. Me and you might not agree on a couple of things, probably on most things, but a couple of things we might not agree. But the conversation, I always have a saying: everything starts with a conversation.
everything.
Everything starts with a conversation, and that's why platforms like this, more platforms like this, is needed.
Uh-huh.
Because like it's interesting. Like I had a conversation. I actually went to high school with this kid, this gentleman, and this was during like the Mike Brown shooting, I think. And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
yo, this is crazy. I was saying something like, this is a problem, blah blah blah. And the guy said, yo, you need to go clean up your neighborhood. And I'm like, honestly, that's not the issue of the day. Issue of the day is what the issue of the day is, which is the unnecessary killing of unarmed black youth or unarmed black people. You know, and every time something like this comes up, every time conversation like this comes up, it's it's had to make somebody uncomfortable as listening to this. It's Blue Lives Matter. It's we got to respect authority and this and that. Nobody ever said for 1 second that all cops are bad.
No.
Let's say that again. Not everybody. Nobody said
Mm-mm.
all cops are bad.
I know
I
some
know.
quite a few good ones.
I know. There's probably like 85% of them, maybe whatever. 70. Let's just put it like this: the majority of them are good cops.
Mm-hmm.
What anybody with some sense is saying is, when someone does something like this maliciously, get them out of here.
And
And I
that's a
think,
problem. The lack of
and I,
accountability.
and I think little by little, case here, I've been seeing. I'm a huge forensics fan, and honestly, it's finally starting to happen. One case here, one case there,
That's
where
over
they're
now.
huh?
That's over
Sorry,
now. That's
so
over
now,
now.
some of them are getting like I saw a case on I think I saw a case. Was it First 48 or some other show?
Mm-hmm.
And it was a female officer, Dallas police. She went to the wrong apartment. She thought it was her apartment. Thought this guy who was in his apartment, by the way, who was black, just in his apartment, chilling, relaxed. I'm not sure if he was about to go to bed. She thought she went to the wrong apartment. Thought somebody broke into her apartment and shot and killed this guy. And I think she should have gotten more time, but I think she got like 10 to 15 years in jail.
Mm-hmm.
She was 15 years. I don't think that was. I thought it was a little light, but yeah. I mean, it's starting to happen. It wasn't like, okay, well, you're a cop.
I
You made a mistake,
feel it.
and you're gonna get off. So I think it's starting to.
It was.
This,
It was. Those days are over. I'm just telling you that right now.
Why are you saying that? I get it. I get it. I get it.
We're talking about immunity, or we're talking about giving cops immunity. We're talking about getting people out of jail that stormed the Capitol.
We're not. Oh my God.
So, but I want to ask you something, Mr. C. So,
What up, though?
whenever there was we talked about the marching and sometimes people looting and doing things or destroying a neighborhood. Did we ever run up on the White House? Did we ever storm? I said, have you ever stormed the White House, or did we ever storm the Capitol?
I'm just gonna put this out here, and people are not gonna like it. If black people did what them insurrectionists did on January 6th,
Under the jail,
2020, let me tell you something. I believe, if not all, but literally most blacks that day would have got smoked.
Facts.
Got smoked. I'm gonna say it. I don't care if you don't like it.
But Us as Christians don't see color, Mr. C. Can't say what
I don't
Jesus
care
said.
what
You
nobody
say
say.
we don't.
That they would have got smoked. And I'm saying it openly. You don't have to guess what I'm thinking. I'm telling you what it is. They would have
Mhm.
got smoked.
And now they're pardoned.
And
And
even if
now
they
they're
did,
pardoned.
and even if they didn't, right? And even if they didn't, they'd be under the jail, and there'd be no savior coming to unlock
No.
them bars to lift them out.
Can you imagine under an Obama presidency if black people stormed the Capitol and he would pardon them?
That wouldn't happen. They
He would
wouldn't.
get impeached. These are the things where we're talking about, oh no, no color,
But
no.
you have to also remember, and I tell people this all the time. People say, "Well, Barack Obama didn't do nothing for black people." You have to understand how politics work. People don't understand how politics work on
They
that.
don't.
You had Congress for 8 years reject any proposal he ever sent over there. They rejected and sat on stuff for 8 years. What could he have done for black people in that position? And you don't even know what he's doing behind the scenes, by the way, mind you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But if you want to talk about how politics works, whatever proposals he sent over was either rejected or they sat on it for 8 years. What was he going to do as the president of the United States with a Congress that sat on everything he sent over for 8 years? That's just a rhetorical question. I want people to think about that.
But here's the thing, because and this is why I'm gonna say it honestly, black people are so powerful. You know why? Because they know that if we even the playing field, it's over.
Mm-hmm.
It's over in a lot of ways, right? And no matter what has happened to us, no matter how much we've endured, no matter how much things weren't fair, like the late Maya Angelou said, we rise. No matter what,
Mm-hmm.
the oppression, no matter what
Mm-hmm.
happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
No matter how much things go left for us, we always turn it right. No
Yep.
matter how forgiving we are, sometimes that really irks my soul to see about how forgiving we are. Turn the other cheek, the Bible says. I ain't got no
Well,
more cheeks, man.
you know what, T? Oh, stop it.
No, because
Yeah.
this is what they
All right,
do.
man.
No, this is what they do. They do stuff and then want to control how you react to it. Kill you in the street, but you guys shouldn't protest. Stop you from getting jobs, but you guys shouldn't be robbing. Like this so is at what point do people get tired? At what point? These are the real questions of why people are
Oh,
upset.
well, I think and I always say this, and I don't care. It's public information, not like it's any secret. That's why one of the greatest protests of all time to me personally is the Birmingham boycott. I
Oh, the
love it. Why?
Birmingham boycott. Mm-hmm.
Because people said, "Hey, I don't care how much my feet hurt. I
Mm-hmm.
don't care how much we suffer. We're going to economically bring
Yep.
Birmingham, Alabama to its knees." And I think in our own right, in our own cities, in our own respective places, we can continue to do the same thing if we really make up our mind. And I think with some of the things that's happening with this DEI issue, like the one dude that I saw on social media, he went to Target. He shopped, quote unquote, for like $2,500 worth of stuff, brought it up to the register, let the
And
girl
left
ring
it.
it, and
Yeah.
walked out.
They walked out.
I
You
don't
know,
agree with that though. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you I don't agree with that.
nah,
I don't agree
it
because
was hilarious though.
the
Um,
cashier, I don't care if she's white, the cashier, she's not making the policies,
right,
and that's what I
right.
don't agree with.
She has a
You,
job to do.
you're doing something foul to someone who's just trying to work and put food on the table.
Yeah.
Whether it's black, whether they're white, you know what I'm saying? I understand what he's trying to do, but I don't agree with that method of protest. Don't
And
make it excessively harder for this person just
yeah,
trying to pay their bill.
I
That's just
agree.
me. You know what I'm saying?
I solely agree with that. And the thing for me, I think, is we're getting to a place where it's looking starting to feel like the 1950s all over again a little bit. You know, and it's not a you know, and people say, "Oh, it's not a color thing." No, it is because you know what? They use people that look like us. And if you look at the MAGA camp, they use people who look like us to tap dance for them, boy, and to say certain things that's for them,
I'm gonna
and
keep on dancing, man.
and won't give them a job.
Oh, yo. Well, I hate to say it, but I'm gonna say it out loud. They call that cooning.
Oh
They
yeah,
cooning. They
they
cooning,
they
man.
they love them. They love the
They
coons.
cooning. They cooning. Oh, stop the
They
cooning, boy.
love it. They love it, and this is not a you know it's hard sometimes because it's frustrating to see. You know, it's frustrating to see certain things and the people that they push out there, right? And they push in front of us and say, "Hey, see, he's black and he agrees with us." Jason Whitlock. You
You
know
know,
what I'm saying?
can I tell you something that's funny? I spoke to someone I know that that's an alum from Howard University, right? So the inauguration celebration had was it Mississippi Valley State, the marching band play. And they
Hmm.
did their thing. They was amazing. They
Hmm.
tore it up, right?
Yeah.
I kind of joked with my friend that went to Howard, and I told her, I said so what happened? Why didn't Howard go down there? And she said, you know that. She looked at me like, you already know that wasn't gonna happen. She said if they would have went down there and played, it would have been a mess on campus,
Yeah.
especially and you know what? I wasn't even thinking about it for the moment, and I'm like, oh, back to camera. Nope, they couldn't have let that happen. There's no way.
Hmm.
Nope, that wasn't gonna happen. Nope.
I just always
But
ask the question, Mr. C, if color wasn't so much of an issue, why did they change the color of Jesus to a white person? And they fed it to us for years.
you want to know what's funny? I'm
I'm not even saying
respond.
you got to answer that. I'm just saying.
No. I'm gonna respond with a comment because I asked somebody. I said, if the issues, how did I ask the question? I said, it's one thing if you stuck with the issues, even if you don't like it for whatever issues. I said, but a lot of people, I said, even us, made it so much about her being Indian. They made it so
Bro.
they made it so much about her being Indian more so than about the issues. Oh, and then people not gonna like this part because I didn't even I was completely like surprised. Then they always showed JD Vance by himself in front of the camera. They
That's
never showed his family until the day of the inauguration. They showed his Indian wife.
I don't know. I just don't know how she could I don't know how she could roll with that, but that's neither here nor there. Because people do anything
I'm
for
just telling you. I'm just
no,
telling
but
you.
this
Like,
is what I know.
so I'm like,
Yes.
they didn't show his Indian wife until the day of the inauguration. Not even
Hmm.
the night when not that I know of. I didn't even see that his wife was Indian the night that he won the election when they did the celebration. I didn't see JD Vance's wife that night. I only saw his
Hmm.
wife or paid attention to it the day of the inauguration. So that's why I'm like, why did they make this such an issue about her being Indian when the vice president's wife is Indian?
Well, you saw what
I,
they did to Vivek, right? Vivek,
who?
his name is Vivek Ramaswamy. I think his name is. He's a
Okay.
Republican. He campaigned for Donald Trump, whatever the case
Yeah,
is. That's,
yeah, yeah,
I think,
yeah,
he's an intelligent speaker, and he said, I've never experienced racism a day in my life, right? This is what he said, right? Then he gets on an interview with a MAGA person, a MAGA
yeah.
reporter, and
Okay.
and she told him to his face, "I like you, but I would never vote for you because you're Indian." And then he got on a Doge team, right? And was supposed to do all that, and he ain't on a Doge team no more.
Mm-hmm.
People will show you really what they think about you. They ran. a whole campaign about immigration, and people's wives are immigrants across the board, in the president and the vice president's chair. So these people don't care, is what I'm saying. They pranced out uh, Mexicans for Trump, Latinos, like all kinds of stuff, and then these are the same people who are like, oh, they now it's like, oh, they liked us, really?
Okay.
Well, I mean, what did you expect, right? Like, it is what it is. People will always show you who they are, and these people are brazen about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even like they hide anymore. They're brazen, and so their followers are the same way.
It's funny. Speaking about, like you said, people, stomp on the rise or the success of Black people, right? I've talked to people, again, some I went to high school with, interesting, and a lot of people I went to high school with, and that's code word for
Yeah.
these, right? Not all, obviously, just some of them, some of the ignorant ones.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you bring up LeBron, oh, I can't stand LeBron. And I actually asked some of them I know personally, I'm like, okay, so what's so bad about LeBron? Oh, he's just and this was during the Olympics. Oh, he shouldn't represent our country. Why? Because I guess he supports China, or he did like a lot of business in China. And I'm like, okay, so what's the problem? He's not a real American. So I'm like, okay, so who should represent what African American athlete? They were basically saying he shouldn't be the one that led the United States of America.
Yeah.
Black.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, okay, so what other African American should have led the United States of America when they was marching out for the opening ceremony? Who should it have been? I don't think they had an answer.
No, and they don't.
They didn't want any Black people.
They don't.
I was
The
like,
man's
what
been in. He's
is
been in the league 22 years, married to his high school sweetheart, no kids out of wedlock, stellar, no scandals, right? No real scandals outside of like sports, just stuff with maybe the sports people don't like, but no scandals, no nothing. He doesn't bother anybody, and built his empire the right way. Hired his inner team of his friends, his home people, kept it tight. That's what they don't like.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they don't like.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Because when you look at that, right? To, to be honest, people like him, Obama, they don't want to see in the White House. They rather a convicted felon that looks like them, that believes like them, that will go on and push the agenda that they want to push.
Let me be honest with you, T. A lot of people try to run away from the Bible. They don't want to hear the Bible. But everything you talked about is in the Word of God. When Jesus was led, basically, to be crucified, they put him in front of Pilate. They brought Barabbas, a murderer. And they said, I find no fault with this man, meaning Jesus Christ. They said, crucify him. So Pilate's basically like, yo,
What wrong has this man done?
Who would you rather me, who would you rather me submit to be crucified? Jesus or Barabbas?
Mm-hmm.
They said, with all their might and with all their heart, release that murderer. We want this guy who, in their mind, was a false prophet. They wanted him to be led to be crucified, to be put on that cross, not a convicted murderer. They begged, they practically begged Barabbas to be released. This is what the Bible says. This is what the Bible says. So my point is, do not be surprised or be dismayed. This is all setting up for a major event that people don't want to talk about, which is the coming of Jesus Christ. They don't want what's right, meaning society. This is bigger than politics. What
Mm-hmm.
you're seeing is what's already happened again and again. Happened in the Bible, happened in civil rights. It happened over and over again. You said it yourself. Malcolm X is another revered icon in civil rights history. All he did was realize, based on documentaries, that there is no true racism in the practice of Islam. He went to Saudi Arabia and found out that there were the whitest of white Muslims with the
Mm-hmm.
bluest of blue eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a certain group here in the United States that didn't like that. And
Mm-hmm.
they eliminated him. So when it comes to any element of purity, nobody wants to see that. Nobody wants to see operations of purity last and stand. Well, like they say, okay, you know what? We're gonna crucify Jesus and get rid of him because he's been too impactful in this era. We got to get rid of this guy so we can continue with the atrocities. We can
Mm-hmm.
continue with the dictatorships and the cruel rulership. He is in our way. We got to get him out of our way. So what happened in the Bible happened to Jesus. David comes in. He was impactful in the book of Samuel. Studying that right now again. And he helped Saul by defeating Goliath. What
Mm-hmm.
does Saul do? Man, you helped me, but I don't like you. I still want to take your life. This happened all
Mm-hmm.
over biblical history, civil
Mm-hmm.
rights, even in our common and this era right now. You still have good people doing good things. Bang, often
Mm-hmm.
with a gun, a knife, whatever. You know,
Mm-hmm.
nobody wants to see anything pure rise, move forward in power, and last.
Mm.
Don't want to see it. Don't want to see it.
You know, I'm gonna leave it on this, Mr. C, because I know you gotta get out of here. I know it's late where you're at. I don't want Sirius to kill me. Is it? But and I think that we're gonna take this conversation, I think, to your platform. I think to do a part two. I think that's what we said. You let me know.
Yep.
On live with Mr. C. Let me know. You know,
Yeah, it'll probably be shorter because my show's an hour.
we had to get it out. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we'll
yeah.
we'll do that. You know. But the one thing I will tell people out there, and this is in the words expressed are those of my own. The Christian nationalists, you see me out there, don't try me. Try Jesus, not me. I'm not Michelle Obama. When they go low, we go high. No, when you go low, like Shannon Sharp said, I'll go to the basement. This ain't me. I ain't got no more cheeks to turn. Now I'm in a different place because there's got to be some type of change that has to be had and voices that have to speak up. I'm with all the smoke, and that's just the way it is with me. And I do want to thank Mr. C coming on here and dropping so many gems, having this much needed conversation surrounding what I feel is the state of emergency in politics and the pulpit. And you know, we're gonna continue this conversation on his platform at some point. We'll figure that out behind the scenes. But um, I just want to say I appreciate you. There's more subjects to tackle that we shall. Um, and I just want to say I appreciate you. Thank you for always being an ear, especially when it comes to Christianity. Sometimes it's hard talking to Christians about real life. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes it's hard to talk about real life stuff in terms of that when it comes to just not always being your head in the clouds. Like when you need like someone to just talk to about things in life. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you don't need the thou shalt nots or thou shalt this and thou shalt that. Sometimes you need a real friend.
Mhm.
And you've always been that. So I just want to say thank you for that.
It won't
You know what
change,
I'm
bro.
saying?
It
And
won't change.
Yeah, we get into all, we get into all types of conversations. You know what I'm saying, about Christian stuff, non-Christian stuff, life, because that's what it's about.
Yep.
Brothers need that. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? Brothers need that. You know what I'm
Facts.
saying? And
Hmm.
you've always been that. You've always been there. You know, to always have some cool conversations. Chop it up, whether we agree, we don't agree. We always just able to chop it up and just have a good laugh, a good talk, and so we could hear each other out and just deep dive into some deep waters. And I'm always appreciative of people like yourself that I could do that with, man. So thank you for that. I appreciate you, man. Thank you.
No, no, no question. That'll never change, bro. I'm always here.
Yes,
No, that
sir.
never, sir.
So before we get out of here, tell people where they can find you, where they can book you. I mean, the booking might take a little while. You might need to get on the
Yeah.
waiting list, but tell them where they can book you. Give them everything.
All right. So the station is 520 radio. You can hear the station 24/7, 520collective.com. My show, Live with Mr. C, comes on Sundays at 2 p.m. on that particular station. And also Soul Station Radio in the UK and the United Kingdom. Wednesdays, 12 midnight Eastern Standard Time, 5 a.m. London time. You can also hear Live with Mr. C there. You can follow me day or night, X or IG, MRC_live. And you can get at me anytime, day or night.
Yeah, yeah. And listen, and if you come from Mr. C, you know I'm coming right behind, and you better hope I don't catch it, because if I see it, like I said, I'm coming too. I
I
want
don't
the
want
smoke.
any problems.
If you come from Mr. C, you gotta know somebody. If I catch it, you know what I'm saying. We might, it is what it's gonna be. I had
I
to
ain't
do
gonna
it once.
lie.
I had to do it once. I gotta do it. I do it again.
He did that, and somebody didn't respond. I was like, okay,
If I
you
see
did
it,
it at you did it at your own risk, and I didn't call the dogs. The dogs just came running.
if I catch it, it's what it's gonna be, and that's the way I. That's just the way I roll. So if you come from the sea, you better not miss it. You come to me, you better not miss it. But if it is what it's gonna be, I'm here. I ain't riding. I ain't hiding from no one. It is what it is. Yes, sir. So this has been another edition of Conversations of the Heart. As always, it is your boy T Tell featuring Mr. C Live. Talk to you soon.
Grace
Peace.
and peace.